and the eye wire so I can pull the grip frame away from the body to get to the low pressure regulator. So we're going to remove these screws. Now honestly, this low pressure regulator, you don't have to do a lot of maintenance on this thing. This is not something that you need to be taking apart after every single weekend of play. 30, 40, 50 cases later, worry about getting into the low pressure regulator, but this is not something that you do after your first weekend of taking this gun out. But as you can see here, this is where the low pressure regulator is located. So as I showed you in the grip frame, you actually, when it's in the grip frame, you adjust it through there. So hopefully you can see that. So there's a hole here in the grip frame, and that's where your adjustment screw goes through. Now, it wouldn't be a bad idea to just take a quick look at how the low pressure regulator is positioned, so that when you go and put it back together again, you see where this is positioned. If it's usually it's positioned pretty much flush. So now what we'll do is we'll take out there's a locking nut inside here that holds the low pressure regulator in place. Now there are some shims and there's a shim stacking here, so when we pull this out, we have to be really careful that these shims do not go flying. So let's go ahead and find some needle nose pliers. Okay, and just grab it right here and just wiggle it out. Okay, and actually it all came out in one stack. So basically what you have here when you pull this apart is you have a large, 2 large washers and 8 smaller ones inside here. So I don't think you can see this on the camera, but there's 2 large washers that go together like this, and then 8 smaller washers that go together like this all the way down towards the end. So that's how the low pressure regulator is taken apart. Very easy, very simple to take apart, not much to it. Lube it up with your favorite lube. And put it back in place. So that's the low pressure regulator. And that's about it. And if you want to, you can back this adjustment nut all the way out and clean that up and then stick it back in. But there's really not much with this low pressure regulator. Now, on the low pressure regulator, I don't know if you can see this or not, there is a notch cut out in it. Okay, it's smooth all the way around, and then there's a notch cut out here. That is where this locking screw goes into it. So you need to be careful if you're pulling this out, that when you put it back in, you need to make sure that that indexing, that little index notch there lines up with this groove along the side. Okay, so push that down, line up that indexing groove, and then screw down the nut. Now something else that Proto did with their M8, which I was really happy about, is they slid the solenoid back a little bit to make it easier if you ever needed to replace your eye wires. I really like this. On most of the die guns, if you remember taking these apart, you always had to pull the solenoid out in order to pull out the eye wires. But in this case, what they did was they slid the solenoid back about 1/4 of an inch to give you enough room if you ever needed to pull your eyes out, just to put them right out through the channels. So that was definitely a big thumbs up on die on realizing that pulling the solenoid off to remove the eye wires was a major pain in the ass. So that's something that you just notice as you look inside here, that you can slide the eye wires right out without having to mess around with the solenoid, which is really cool. So now from here, let's go ahead and stretch this back over. What we'll do from here is go ahead and reconnect Okay, connect the eye wires. Okay, once we plug up the eyes and the solenoid, what we'll do is we'll test it. Okay, eyes work. Grab the Allen key and screw it in through the front. Take the Allen key and put it in through the back. Now we'll put in the grip frame screws. Now, like I said, the low pressure regulator on the Proto is something that you really shouldn't have to mess a lot with. Maybe once every 40, 50 cases is when I would look in there. Other than that, leave it alone. It's not anything that you need to get into. If you don't know what you're doing, or lose a shim, your gun is definitely not going to be shooting right. So let's go ahead and put in the fuse bolt. Screw on the high pressure regulator. Okay, we'll grab a tank and air it up.